I've seen some questions about how to make magazines on Everskies, so I'm going to show you how to on the desktop website. First, I'm going to walk through the technical process, and then in the second part of the video, we're going to have a little bit of a discourse about Everskies and the content of the game. In the upper left-hand corner, you're going to go ahead and select the shopping bag and select magazines. This is how you can purchase magazines that have been published by other users. Before you get into making magazines, I recommend browsing through, finding some that you like, and then I'll show you how to read them. To access your magazine library, go ahead and hover over your own profile picture on the upper right-hand corner, and one of the options will be magazines. You'll see all of the magazines that you've purchased, and you'll be able to select them and open them and read through them. I think it's pretty clear that there's a lot of opportunity to organize and tweak and optimize the way that this library works, but that's not the point of today's video. Let's look at some magazines and take some things into consideration. So these are magazines that I've purchased. We're going to look at this first one by Paris Core. It's called Cute Items Part 2. We have a collage on the front cover. We have an index. And then we have items embedded in the page. As we continue further, we see more items in front of a collage, and that's the format of this magazine. Final pages are collage. Something worth noting is that these first two pages are free. What do I mean that they're free? If we go to the shopping section and we look at the magazine shop and we scroll through the magazines, when we browse through them, the first two pages are going to be free, and then it's going to say purchase the magazine to see more. We got the cover, we got the first two pages, and then that's all. This technology will sometimes be acknowledged by the first page admitting that this is the free content, and it really gives importance to the table of contents so you know what to expect after you purchase it. For instance, this one says freebies, and that's the only free portion of the magazine. It tells you what will be on what pages, it tells you the freebies, and then it gets into the content, but you have to purchase the magazine to see the remaining pages. So you're going to want to keep that in mind, that the first two pages after the cover are going to be advertising for the content that comes after the freebie 2 pages. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to place an image in the background, how to put different items on the page, and then we'll talk about text boxes and text effects. While the freebies on the first 2 pages is something of a standard that you'll see, it's not required by any means. I just want you guys to understand that whenever there is a form of media or a community, there will be standards within that community for what goes on with that media. And the standard in this community is that on the first 2 pages, because you could see them, it's normal to have a table of contents and freebies. I'm also going to show you guys how to layer different images and the text boxes and the kind of limitations that we see in the application. For the point of today's video, we're going to make a magazine. So we're going to go to the top left. There is a tab that says Created Magazines. We're going to go ahead and select that. And then at the bottom right corner, there should be an option to create a magazine. This will bring you to the magazine creation interface. In this interface, we have the different pages along the top. You'll start off with only the cover, and then you can select the add page button and you'll add pages, or you can select the downward arrow after a page's name and you can choose to duplicate that page, and that will just copy the page into a second form. I'm going to go ahead and build out the cover page and show you the process of adding images. Here on the cover page, we see on the far right side a list of layers, and all we're really seeing in the far left section that has the body of the page is a small white box in the upper left hand corner. There's nothing in this box, it's empty. We're going to find a pattern on Google image search of a grid, and once we found one that we like, we are going to copy the image address, the URL where the image is hosted. We are going to add it to the cover by selecting a layer and adding the picture's URL to that layer. Now that the picture is on the page, you can hover over the corners and you should be able to scale it up in size. There is a width limit of 1,000 pixels, so you'll want to stay within that, and some images can only scale up so much. This image does not fill the page entirely, so I duplicate it, and I have some ideas for a design, so I find another image and I add it on top of that. What I've noticed about the aesthetic of Everskies is that there is a lot of interest and enthusiasm around what's called Y2K, or the early aughts culture, and also we're looking at 90s culture. I see a lot of references to MySpace or early internet technology like early dolls makers. I'm cutting in real quick just to show how you can duplicate a layer. You just click on the downward facing arrow next to the layer name, and then you can select duplicate, and then you've duplicated that layer and you can edit it agnostic of the first layer. And what I'm doing with this scene is I'm going to do some callbacks to 90s culture, featuring 3 movies from 1998, starting with You've Got Mail, and then going into Practical Magic and The Parent Trap. They're just very aesthetic movies. The first one that I thought of was obviously You've Got Mail, and even though the clothing for all 3 of those lend the outfits to a different time of year, I thought it would be an interesting and strong aesthetic to follow for this magazine. It's always easiest if you're working from an aesthetic or a style or something that has a body of work that you can reference in your magazine to work from. Whenever you add an image to the page, it's going to automatically have this white box around it. It kind of looks like a stroke if you're familiar with that concept around the image. And if you would like to get rid of that, you're going to go to the typography box, and to the right of the option that has an A as a logo, and to the left of the option that has an arrow pointing 2 directions is a background box. There is no logo in the background box, so it can be very easy to overlook. You're going to select that, and in the background box, you're going to select background type none, and this will set the box to transparent. Besides adding images, another interesting thing to do is use the solid color boxes that the application offers you. I decided to use a little bit of reverse design by using the white rectangles to form kind of a reverse image and design in the middle of the other design. So it kind of splits all of the image into 4 different grids, which I think it looks interesting, and they're easy to use. You just pull on the corners or on the edges of the box, and you could change the colors and the opacity of these boxes. It's very edgy and interesting looking. I really like the way it looks, and it also obscures the edge of the grids that don't exactly line up. It distracts, it takes the attention elsewhere. Designers will use these in their magazines just as interesting blocks of color. Now let's go over how you embed little pieces of clothing. So here we have a magazine, and on their freebies page, they have different accessories that you can directly buy just from clicking on the magazine. So that's why they're called freebies. You're able to freely interact with these without even buying the magazine. If you want to embed clothing in your magazine, you're going to have to come up with a way to organize the type of clothing that you want to use and how you want to store it and how you want to catalog it in your mind. You're going to go to your wardrobe, and you're first going to select the clothes. It's best if it's clothes that you own. It makes it easier for referencing and working with. You're going to select the clothes. In the upper left-hand corner of the clothing card, you're going to select the 3 dots, and you're going to add it to a drawer. You're going to add it to a drawer, and so that's why it makes a lot of sense if you've set up a drawer for this look. It makes it so much easier to find the clothes later if they're already segregated into their own specific drawer, if they're organized, if they're cataloged into a drawer category. It'll just make it easier for when you are actually in the magazine trying to drop clothes in, because otherwise you'll have to go through your entire wardrobe in order to find the clothes. Now that we've added the clothing into the drawer, we can go back to the magazine editor, and I'll show you how to embed the clothing into the magazine page. You're going to go to the page, And then in the layer editing box, you're going to select the puzzle piece icon, and you're going to select add an item from my wardrobe. The wardrobe page will pop up, and this is the same across every browser instance that I've tried this on. The navigation panel at the top isn't fully rendered, it's like transparent, but in the far right, if you can see it, it says drawers. And once you select that, you should be able to see your drawers and select from there. For me, there is a huge lag between when I added something to my drawer and when it shows up in my drawer, so you might want to keep that in consideration. You might have to wait a couple hours for it to show up on your end. If you're getting frustrated and you're like, I swear I added that, where is it? That could be what's going on. And so once you select it from your drawer, then you will have the item load to that box in the page. From there, you have the same considerations for the background of the text box and positioning and scaling as you do for other elements. When I was looking through magazines, I kept seeing a layout where all of the items were layered, and so basically all you could see is how much they cost. And so I'm replicating that style over here, and that's how I'm layering. Using the same process as items, you can also embed clothing sets that are for sale. So this is just a clothing set, and it's much smaller per item because it is the overall set showing up in the image. Let's quickly go over drop shadows. Let's also go over drop shadows. So when I select this layer that has the chat box in it, I'm going to go ahead and select drop shadow. You could choose the color of the drop shadow and then the distance away on the XY axis that the drop shadow will be. And then you could also play around with the blur level. For this one, I decided to keep it a little bit sharper because it's more of a graphic treatment than a literal shadow. But in other places, I used a softer shadow, and you would handle that by making the blur larger. I like drop shadows in general. I use them a bit, but I always, have pretty low opacity or high blur if I'm going to work with them. If you're working with them in print, what you want to keep in mind is that it's going to be much darker in print than what you see online. So that is my recommendation there if any of you are going into working in any type of print work at your school or at work, is just keep in mind it's going to be much darker if it prints from a printer than as you see it on the screen. So I'm a big fan of high blur, low opacity drop shadows. I'm generally pleased with the way that this has turned out, so I'm going to go ahead and publish. You need a name for your magazine, so I'm going to call it issue 1, 1998 vibes. Pricing, I want it to be pretty affordable, so I'm going to set it for 5 Stardust. I'm selecting a label, or you have to create a new label. Describe it. Alright, and so there is a publishing fee, so you have to have 10 of the premium currency. If you're going to be minting a new label, that's another 100 currency, and then the total is 110. So I'm going to go ahead and select publish, and it will undergo a review before it goes live. Now that we've got that technical process out of the way, I thought I would just kind of open the floor to conversation or feedback or input from you guys about the state of EversSkies. I decided that I wanted to make an EversSkies video, so I went over to the website and I started playing again, interacting, seeing how the development has gone. I posted a thread asking, what do you do when you come online? So I want to hear from you guys, those watching this video right now, all kinds of folk, whoever you are, wherever you are. Why do you play EversSkies? What do you get out of it? What do you do when you come online? What's your feedback for the game? While I've made several videos about the drama of EversSkies, I'm more interested in the method of play and the kinds of creative concepts this game opens up to users with outfit creation. I am interested in the discourse about compensating minors for their work because, as I mentioned before, child labor laws are lagging behind when it comes to digital spaces and making sure that minors aren't being taken advantage of by developers. I know that that's kind of unpopular with the Everskies community, who are largely minors and who would like to be able to participate as a means of play. So that's one of those touchy topics. They had a major overhaul of the moderator process. They took away the forms. And like I said, I've covered that before in previous videos. I'm more so concerned on looking forward, the direction that EversSkies is going, and how it plays into a larger ecosystem for the native users, the users who are playing this on a regular basis, who are in the prime audience. So I would say, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. On the site, I have do not interact if you're a minor on my account page, so I ask that you respect that, and if you are going to provide feedback or commentary and you are a minor, just please leave it on a comment on this YouTube channel or just somewhere public instead of a private message. I generally just don't interact with minors over DMs. I don't think that's a good or safe practice for anyone. From there, the obvious question becomes, Julie, if you're uncomfortable interacting with the prime users of this website and you're twice the age of many of the prime users, why are you playing this game? I'm a 30-year-old woman. I don't want to pretend that I have some kind of deep inclination or draw to this game, right? If I were a 15-year-old, I probably would have loved this game. I love doll makers. I've played many avatar dress-up games for many years. It's a natural inclination of mine that I had when I was younger, but as a 30-year-old woman, this isn't a natural place to find me. It doesn't necessarily make sense. I always am a little leery to content creators who make content for a demographic that they are largely divorced from. So why am I making this content? As I mentioned, this does have a natural overlap with the type of content that I am very closely affiliated with. I grew up playing these sorts of games, so I do have a critical eye for what's going on here, and I'm interested in it from that perspective. But on the other hand, you have to keep in mind that this is a YouTube channel that grows depending on the kind of content it makes. I think that the other games that I play could get some real positive interaction from EversSkies users coming to my channel and watching my other videos. I think that this kind of content could be a gateway to other content. And whenever I make EversSkies videos, they do very well. It's an underserved community. So that's basically why I'm making these videos. I wanted to acknowledge it because it feels weird to me when I see people making videos about games that they clearly don't like. And I don't want to pretend that this is a natural fit for me, because in this point of my life, it isn't.